Hello and welcome, everybody. I'm so glad you're here, and I hope you all have had a great week and are sashing into a greater weekend. Today, we're talking about reimagining your brand and then advocating it into reality, one of my favorite sessions to give. And so before we get into the thick of it, I think you all know I love getting to know you. And I have a quick kind of get to know you question, especially for those of us who are trying to soak in the last of summer. So my question for you is, tell us a summer tradition that you like. Here we are in August, lots of us already looking ahead at September and beyond. What is something you do or look forward to? Could be fireworks, could be barbecuing, a trip. What is that for you? Rebecca, thank you for sharing. Love walking my dog around the park. How nice. Feels different than it does in the middle of winter, doesn't it? And for me, one of my favorite things I have really loved doing over the summer is my kids are in day camp. And each summer we take them out one day and they get to plan a hooky day. We call it just me and each of them, one of them. And so I just had both of those, one with my son, one with my daughter, and it was so fun. Everything from manicures and lunch to arcades and other things. So I was teasing them like, will you still do this with me when you're 17? I hope so. So here's to those traditions. If you have a summer tradition you enjoy, a little one or a big one that you never want to miss, share it with us in the comments. Hina, dipping in the water. Yes. So uniquely summer, hitting a pool or chilling at the beach. That sounds fabulous. I hope you get a lot of that this month. All right. Well, before we jump into brand, I'm very excited to hand it over to my wonderful community manager, Rebecca Chalson, and she is going to share a few words with us about the community and how to maximize your experience in it. And then we'll get right into it. So Rebecca, I'm going to pass it to you. I think you're able to unmute yourself. Let me know if you have any trouble doing that.
Great. I think I did.
Fabulous.
Oh, hi, everybody. It's so great to be a part of these calls. I've been learning a lot as well, and I've been enjoying getting to know everybody. One of the things that's important with my role is helping support you and getting the most value from your experience with us. And one of the things I wanted to talk to you about is how you can maximize your value, especially with downloading the app. If we want to go ahead and switch to the next slide.
Sure.
Okay, but first, before we go into downloading the app, I want to talk to you real quick to remind you the benefits of what you can expect every week. So the first week, obviously, we have a training webinar of the month. Second week, we do group challenges to help engage and implement what we've learned. And then the third week, you get your pro tip download, which is your grab copy to implement the skills that you're learning right away. And then week 4 is our fun group huddle, where we all get to know each other with what are they called? Where we go out into our breakout. Thank you. Breakout sessions. And that has been really fun to get to know you all as well. So that is what you can expect. And then if we can go to the next slide real quick. So what we have found, the members who are benefiting the most from the community are those who have actually downloaded the Kajabi community app, okay? And so here are the reasons why. One, that represents that you have fully committed to the program, that you are ready to really harness the power of the training you've been learning to develop your leadership skills. And keep in mind, you really deserve to invest in yourself in this way. So download the app to make the most of the community. And the other thing to keep in mind is when you download the app, you will receive live notifications. So when Selena jumps in and says hello doing a live, you won't miss out. I would hate for you to miss out on any of the tips and motivation that Selena and other team members are providing you throughout the week. And then the other thing to keep in mind is that you're going to get community support throughout the month by downloading this app. Whereas if you don't, you're going to miss out on the conversations and responses that you might otherwise not be able to see. And then keep in mind, the app is very easy to use. So if we go ahead and go to the next screen, do you have the screen with the video?
I don't. That wasn't in the mix.
Okay. So to tell you about the video, so I've recorded a video, but I'll basically tell you what you can expect. When you download the app, make sure it's the Kajabi community app. There's another one that says Kajabi products, I believe, but make sure you download Kajabi community and just click through the different buttons. And you'll see how easy it is to do the challenges on there, to review the pro tips, the videos, replays, and to message other community members as well. So if you have any questions, or if you have ideas or concerns or whatever it may be, the easiest way to reach out to me is through the app. You'll notice that when you download it, in the top right corner, there is a pencil with paper, and that is where you can message community members. So you click on that, find me, Rebecca Charlson, and send me any questions, and let's get to know each other more that way as well. So the moral of the story, download the Kajabi app, get the most, and I'm looking forward to helping you get the most out of your engagement with our community.
Thank you so much, Rebecca, for helping us be confident communicators and more. I really appreciate it. And listen to what she says, everybody. It works. It's true. All right. So let's get into our topic today around personal brand. And I hope you'll indulge me in a little metaphor here that I think really relates to brand. And that is this, okay? If any of you know a kid, right, in your life, you have a kid in your life, maybe it's your own kid, maybe it's a kid you know or care about, you probably know they can be a little naughty sometimes, right? This happens, okay? Well, if you've ever seen the premise of the show Super Nanny, you know that Joe Frost, this kid whisperer, she goes into people's homes and she finds these like wild kids, right? Who are like hanging from the chandeliers and climbing the walls and misbehaving like crazy. And remarkably, in a matter of days, these kids are well behaved. You know, they're complying with some of the boundaries and the rules that people have set. It's really an amazing transformation to watch. Now, I want to ask you this in the chat. For any of you who've watched a show like this, or maybe a similar show, who is our kid whisperer really training? Tell me in the chat. Who is she really training? Is it the kids? Is it someone else? What do you all notice? Yes, all of you saying the parents, yes, right? And it's so true, isn't it? Something I've said before, and I'll repeat it again. You set the tone for how people treat you. And of course, that's the reason she's focusing so much on teaching the parents, right? Because in some cases, they're getting what they're tolerating. All right. So in a similar way, when it comes to your personal brand, why not give people the language, the guidance, the training for how to describe you? Okay. I've had the pleasure to interview lots of women leaders, one of whom is Darlene Slaughter, a chief diversity officer. And she says about your brand gets to the next place before you even do. When you show up at the door, people will already have an opinion. What will it be? Some people might find that a daunting question, but I find it a really exciting question. Like, the world is your oyster. You get to decide, you get to chisel this out of marble. The problem is, for so many people, when it comes to their personal brand, they kind of have a brand that's been created by default. Not so much thought and design and intention, but this collection of impressions, that people have kind of put on them. Okay. And so today is about really taking an active hand. If you remember one thing about, defining your brand, it's really this. It's how people describe you when you're not in the room. The words that come to mind, the phrases, the adjectives. Let's make it awesome. Let's make it unforgettable. Let's make it uniquely you. So some of what I have on our menu for today to break this down and make it a little more manageable is to identify what I call your zone of genius, your specialty area where you bring that unique value proposition. That's like the foundation of the home, right? That your brand is built on. From there, I want to help you articulate your brand. I'm going to give you some inspiration and ideas from thousands of other people I've trained on personal brand who've shared theirs with me to give you some ideas. And then last, it's not enough to just know your zone of genius to be able to say what your brand is. You got to be willing to fight for it and advocate, take actions that are aligned with helping you live that brand. So I'm so excited as well for that section to give you some comebacks for some of the common responses people get when they're trying to level up their brand. All right, so I want to hear from you. I'd love for you to think of somebody with a really exceptional brand. And I'm not talking about the amazing Beyonce or maybe Tina Fey. I'm a big lover of comedy, or even Doug the Pug of internet fame, right? Not them. I'm talking about somebody you know. And I want you to think of this person who has this excellent personal brand. What is it about them that's different? What do they do differently than others? You don't have to tell us who it is, but what about this person stands out? I want to hear from you when you think about those really great brands. Charming, funny, smart. So a lot about this person's interpersonal skills, right? That's probably interesting for some of us who think about a brand as someone's expertise. This person's talking all about their interpersonal, and also hearing energetic, again, how they show up. Maybe that's showing their conviction, their passion for what they're about. And another one, confident and humble. Yeah, those are wonderful aspects of a brand. Someone who's confident, but maybe knows the limits of what they know. They're still humble. They're still a learner. And seeing some of you saying communication is well thought out. All right, so they give their words some weight. They don't just ramble or say anything that comes to mind. They might choose their words, make a point to prepare. And Chelsea, hello, Chelsea, good to see you. They give back, they do good for society and their communities. I love conscious brands. Awesome. So maybe it's not just a me, individual focus. Excellent. Hold on to these and let's see how you add to them over our time today talking about brand. So let's get into identifying your zone of genius. This sounds like an awesome thing to do, but I think for so many of us, we might wonder, like, that's great. Where do I start? How do I actually do that? And so I want to share with you one of the biggest revelations from interviewing now over 50 C-suite level women leaders of major organizations. And one of the most empowering messages I heard from them was this. They said, I didn't get to where I am because I just hammered myself for my weaknesses. I got to where I am because I figured out early on my signature strengths. And I cultivated those strengths into superpowers. And I would argue it's the same for all of us. It's the same for all of us. What is your signature strength? I recommend you invest in it. You spend time on it, you strengthen it so that you can cultivate it into something undeniable. And it's not just me that thinks about these things. We actually have lots of research about strengths. For example, those people who use their strengths every day, they're more likely to have that excellent quality of life. Who doesn't want that, right? They're more likely to be engaged, which is really important considering there's an engagement crisis at work, right? And kind of goes with that they're less likely to quit and they're more likely to be productive. Okay, so many of us get that buzz, that boost from doing something where we can really contribute at a great level. And so despite all those amazing benefits, isn't it interesting that these are really underused and underleveraged? What percent, tell me in the chat, do you think of workers actually use their strengths every day? Kind of mentally look around your workplace. What percent do you think actually use their strengths every day and put these to work? Okay, seeing some guesses across the board, lots around the 50 or 60 mark, some people saying maybe only 10. I think we'd be in better shape if it was closer to 50 to 60%. I think we'd have more satisfaction and engagement at work. But in fact, the answer is 20. Yeah, less than 2 in 10 workers actually put these strengths to work day in and day out. Okay. And so I think there's one more nuance that really helps fill this picture out as we're thinking about strengths. And it's this. We know that it pays to be distinctive in your strengths. One study done at Oxford University actually found that those people who had a strength that was tagged as uncommon or more rare were the happiest workers of all. So it pays to strive for that singularity. What are those unique hybrid strengths you bring to the table that are in demand, but maybe a little bit more unusual versus those that lots of people in the group around you have? Think about how you might invest in those, play those strengths up. Okay, so what is this zone of genius? How can we break it down and incorporate our strengths? Well, one of the things I want to ask you to think about as you're looking at your personal brand is, of course, what am I passionate about? What gets me fired up? If I'm researching it, maybe I forget what time of day it is, or to get up and get a snack and something to eat. I enjoy immersing myself and getting lost in it. Okay. Adding to that, and I'm going to put this on the list, is what are my strengths? How can I make this not just about my interest, but where I'm capable, where I have that undeniable ability? Now, if we were to kind of stop here and build our brand and identify our zone of genius just off of what's here, we'd be in trouble, right? Because we may have something we personally love and that we're really good at, but it's this next component that really gives our zone of genius teeth, makes it sustainable, and that's need. So what is that need that you're seeing that lines up with your zone of genius? It might be within your employer where you are and maybe where you want to grow and keep, developing, or maybe it's something broader, a need within your industry. Okay, so I want you to think about those. And I'm a big fan of examples. So I have an example for you to kind of make this real. And it's an example from my own life. I wish I had done an exercise like this sooner, because I think it would have helped me feel a little more empowered, a little bit more like the author of my own story and my own career. So here's a quick example. With the passion, for me, that is geeking out on research in my field on leadership and careers and management. I love doing that. I don't tire of looking at studies and new research. I like writing about it, and I really like designing curriculum like what these webinars are all about. My strengths, from some of the feedback I've gotten, they have to do with educating, advising and coaching clients and emerging leaders and doing training. When I think about the need, it's to help, create more of those bold, inclusive leaders. And from an organization standpoint, to help them build more of a bench of talent in their organization. If you put all of that together and you focus on them, maybe overlap that sweet spot in the middle, for me, it's about cultivating, empowering, capable, emerging leaders. And of course, the hope there is it benefits the person, the individual, but it also benefits their whole organization, creates like a ripple effect. So how about you? I would love for you to take a picture of this diagram, to spend a little time, 5 or 10 minutes after this webinar, thinking about your zone of genius and jotting down, brainstorming some ideas, and really trying to think about what that intersection is in the middle that gives you a sustainable, undeniable brand. And it's okay, by the way, if this changes over time. It's going to. How you might answer today may not be the same way as 5 years from now, 2 years from now. That's okay. And you'll see in the purple bubble there, just another metaphor, another way to think of it, the need that you might be thinking about within your industry or employer. Sometimes I think of it as a need, but sometimes I ask people, is it a painkiller, like a problem solve that you're offering to your industry, to keep technology safe, for example, if you were in cybersecurity? Or is it more of a vitamin type need? Is it maybe something preventative you're doing to help your industry or company? Maybe that is, a risk department within an organization, right? Who's protecting, keeping the organization safe, vitamin in some way. So just a different kind of metaphor for you to think about need as you hash this out for yourself. Okay, so you have your zone of genius. Okay, you're working on that. There are some key shifts that I've identified over the years in training individuals that can help somebody go from an individual contributors type brand to more of a leader's brand. And I want to share some of these with you. And as I do, I hope you'll try to identify at least one that could make a difference for you, let's say in the next year, if you were to actively work on that. So in your career, what upgrade would you like to make? And so the first difference I want to point out is around communication. And it's moving from this mindset of an update giver. I almost picture like a capable sideline reporter at a football game. You can report the facts, you can get information across, but it's different from upgrading to a complexity translator. Somebody who can, based on the audience at hand, tailor their message to them. So whether it's a really technical audience, or maybe it's more of a mixed or like layperson audience, they know how to translate the message to the group in front of them. Here's another one, moving from that competent, capable doer, the smartest in the room, to somebody who's more of a booster of collective IQ. Somebody who's making it psychologically safe for people to bring their best ideas, to the team or to the group. They're not just thinking about, what I convey, what I offer, what I can do, but they're really trying to raise the status of the whole group. How about going from that results driver, you know that they can execute on a task, to somebody who's thinking bigger, like a business transformer. They're saying, what's next for us? Or they're thinking beyond their department alone. How could these divisions partner or interact in a more modernized way? Okay, they're thinking wider about the entire business. Going from that problem solver, more of the reactionary mindset, here's a problem that's been given to me to solve, to an agenda setter. You're thinking ahead, you're looking forward, you're the one drafting what's going to be discussed. That's a different mindset than just putting fires out. One of my favorites is going from that inside out thinker, where you think within the confines maybe of your department. You think about that first, and then maybe you think about the outside world as an afterthought, to the other way around. So you're thinking about the trends, the forces, the major seismic shifts happening in your industry, and you're purposefully keeping an eye on those things and bringing them into your department and your organization. Somebody is going to make the smart comment about something your competitor's doing in a meeting. Why shouldn't it be you who raises that? Who says, I really think we ought to keep an eye on? Or has anyone considered? What if we looked at the business slightly differently as we evolve? And one more, going from that team motivator, I can, rally everyone to get something accomplished, to someone who's thinking more broadly about the culture. How can we unleash a culture of high performance, where people can be authentic, that's representative and diverse, right? So many of these, as you probably see, kind of move from me to we. And so let me know, take a look at this list, chat to us. You can just chat us the word on the right. What's the upgrade you'd most like to make? That could make a difference for you. Translating that complexity? Is it becoming more of the agenda setter? More of that outside in thinker? Chat it to us so we can kind of cheer you on as you make those upgrades and changes. Agenda setter. Yes, Anissa, goes with your name too. I love it. Alasia, I'm so happy to see you here. Complexity translator. Yeah. We really appreciate it when somebody can translate different messages. We may not say to ourselves, oh, what a skill. But boy, is it easier to digest their message, to say yes to their requests and proposals, because they're not talking over us. And another vote for outside in. I love it, Sonia. I love it. I can't wait to hear Rebecca too, that outside in collaborative mentality. One little hack for that, since many of you are saying outside in, and go Kathy with boosting collective IQ. One of the things that helped me with that outside in thinking was to set Google alerts In case you haven't done this, you can set Google alerts for any type of keyword or message. So maybe it's your organization's name. Maybe it's a competitor you want to keep your eye on. Maybe it's something to do with your industry, and you get a digest of what's new every single day, like breaking news, but just in one email about that, and can be really powerful. So the best part is it's kind of passive. It just comes to you once you sign up, and you can kind of refine it over time and make it a little bit better of a search engine for you. But that's a big help. Okay, so you've given some thought to that unique niche, that unique value proposition that you can bring. How do we talk about this brand? How do we actually bring some language and words to it that make sense to people? And excuse me for that. Well, I want to tell you a quick story of a woman who did this, a woman that I coached, a client some time ago. And she was, as she would describe it, the most junior person in her department. Okay. She was in a difficult situation where they weren't hiring new people or doing a lot of promoting or upgrading within her group. And she had a lot of hunger and appetite to get away from this back room analyst, which she was, to be more client interacting and facing. Not exactly easy to do when the company is not developing people a lot or investing in new roles, and she's got the least juice of anybody in this department. When I asked her what her brand was, what is your brand today? She said with a chuckle, I'm like the dustbuster. She was like, I feel like my brand is like the trash picker after a ball game. I'm the one who's coming around and cleaning up people's messes. And I said, what do you want it to be? And she said, the client advisor. And it was such a wonderful thing to watch her advocate in smart, creative ways for more of these opportunities. And so she did that. She took a more vocal role in speaking to her teammates and those around her, saying, I'm looking for an opportunity to work with a cross-functional group, to get to know and build bridges with other people in the organization. And she got to serve on one of those cross-functional committees. She also asked her manager pointedly to, and some of the other seniors on her team, to join some of their client presentations, to be able to go on some of those and help out and provide some relief. And this is the other thing she did, not once or twice, but several times. She was that little, bee buzzing in her manager's ear, reiterating, I'd really like to get exposure to client service. I'd really like to be known, one day as a client consultant. Okay. Even though she felt self-conscious, even though she felt sometimes like she was saying this till she was blue in the face. And it's awesome to know that she got there, that she got that experience, not with a lot of support or programs or formal kind of development around her, but really through using her voice, changing her brand from she's that trash picker, that dustbuster who works in the back, to she's ready, to own client relationships, to advise some of our best. And it's the same for you. In some ways, if you feel like you're overdoing it by communicating some of your wants and hopes, you're doing it right. No one can sum it up as well as Marshall Goldsmith. He's a famous executive coach, and he says, what got you here won't get you there. And it's true, isn't it? If you think about it, you wouldn't join an organization that couldn't grow or scale or improve and evolve. And in a similar way, your employers are looking at you that way, wanting to know you can scale up and do new things, bring new skills or POVs, perspectives. So one of the things I'd like you to do as you kind of craft your own brand is to ask yourself, how would I like people to describe me, not way into the future, but 18 months from now, let's say? They're saying things like, wow, when I think of her work, I think of. And what do I need to demonstrate more of today to get there? Okay, whatever that aspirational kind of future brand looks like for you, what do you need to demonstrate now? Something you might need more of in order to close that gap and get there. Okay, you can see in our last example for our dustbuster friend, it was doing less of the kind of dead end type work that wasn't getting her anywhere and doing more of the client facing work, the work that was going to help her build new bridges and relationships. For so many people who are, building a brand, they're moving through something that looks a little bit like this, a process of being a valued contributor, maybe growing expertise in a certain area, knowing more than certain others about, what their core domain, maybe moving into managing others, doing that contributing or who own that expertise, all the way up to enabler, somebody who's unleashing leadership and performance more broadly. So as you think about building your brand, I want you to consider some of that progression and to consider some inspiration brands that come from other people. So I want to show you just a few of them that I've collected over the years. Some technical folks, technical type brands. People have talked about their pride in being known as like a idea innovator or that process optimizer, that data translator, right? Someone who's making impact in that way. Different maybe from a more value-based brand, like a growth expert, a trusted advisor, that client advocate. And some of the most popular I've collected have been very people-focused, kind of like Rebecca's doing for us with building community, or somebody who sees themselves as a champion or advocate, right? A facilitator, maybe within their team or group. Okay, so I want to ask you all, taking some of this inspiration and knowing it's totally okay to have a very much a first draft type brand, what might that be for you? What might a leadership brand be for you? And I can flip back to some of our inspiration here for a minute. But give us your best try, right? This is all about us having a safe place to experiment, to be the first draft version of ourselves. And that is totally welcome here. You're not expected to, produce some perfectly polished, finished thing. So what would you like to be known for when you think about your work? What would you say, oh, that'd feel awesome for somebody to describe me that way? Amazing client advocate, Anissa. Yes. People inspirer. Love it. So you're creating a cascade of feel good and empowerment, it sounds like. Katya, great to see you, Katya. Community builder. Yes, that makes so much sense and is so important whether you're in the nonprofit space or you're in a corporate space. We need communities. How about others of you? Chelsea, healing, growth, empowerment facilitator for women. So needed in the world. And we're cheering you on. I love this. Approachable and resourceful to the organization and community. Sonia, I love it. It makes me want to go up to you and approach you, just knowing that. So I love seeing these. Do you see, I hope that you can kind of see the difference between kind of bobbing along with that default personal brand, that just kind of sort of happened on its own, to leveling up to something more purposeful, where you're architecting how you want to be known. You're maybe training others how to see you. It's a pretty amazing thing, a pretty amazing difference. Well, I love this quote from Bozoma St. John. She's the CMO at Netflix, and she says, "Nobody started talking about me until I started talking about me." And this, for some of you, it might be hard to think about kind of like tooting your own horn, making your brand known to others, right? Yet it's so important. Otherwise, it's just like really great information that you keep to yourself. So how do we kind of make it visible, make it seen? And some of the visible opportunities that I've seen over the years, including that our case example coachee used, are things like this that really do build your visibility, like getting out there and being the face of something, giving a presentation, representing your organization in some kind of public way, maybe at an event or via a video or social media. How about raising your hand for a stretch opportunity? Of those leaders who advanced through their organization, a stretch opportunity was seen as the single #1 best development experience, voted by leaders who had made it to the top as the best development opportunity over and above 360 assessments or formal classroom training, was actually getting in and doing a stretch type assignment, something that is outside your main domain. How about re-engineering a process, maybe one that's not working especially well, or that's kind of faulty or broken? Compiling best practices, engaging with critics. I often tell the story of even just collecting data, doing an analysis in a way that nobody else has. I interviewed Dee Dee Wilson, a CFO at Nike, and she said, we at Nike were sponsoring the Olympics. And she said nobody had ever done an accounting of what that sponsorship cost our company in total every year. And she said, I decided to do this. And she was like, I was shocked and people were flabbergasted by the size of the spend. And she said, that kind of became my claim to fame. And you might think, oh, it's just an analysis of existing information. But for her, it gave her a platform. So remember, once you collect data, you kind of become the leading expert of that data, the owner of those insights. So some small suggestions to boost your visibility. Some other things as you work on your brands, maybe fine tune them over time, you could consider your LinkedIn bio, right, as a place to advertise that brand. Again, training other people how to see you. How about even in your reviews? Like our friend did in the example, I'd like to position myself as more of a strategist, more of a client-facing professional here, as more of a manager, managerial type role, whatever it is for you, being willing to repeat that, to bring it back. How about in your elevator pitch? Your picture literally being in the elevator, you're in there with the new SVP at your company, and they say, so nice to meet you. What do you do here? You could say, well, I'm the manager of operations. Or you could tell them something about your brand, how you want to be known. My sweet spot is all about helping things at our organization run smoothly, making things as efficient as possible. Whatever it might be ready in those elevator pitch moments to share your brand. And even in social time. This matters because we've talked about the power of weak ties mattering even more than those close, intimate ties when it comes to getting opportunities. So be willing at that wedding or party, if some of your aspirations come up, some of discussion about where you'd like to be, to tell people, my ultimate goal is to land a CMO type role within this kind of organization. Help them help you. Linda Descano, she's a president at Citi when I interviewed her, and she talked about the fact that sometimes wonderful things come your way that you have to say no to. And she says, around the power of repetition, don't assume people know your intent. If you liked an assignment but couldn't go after it once, in every follow-up, reiterate you remain interested. And I like that because it also kind of brings an abundance mindset, not like, oh, it's one and done. If I miss that opportunity, the ship has sailed for me. But to continue to remind people to look for opportunities, that you're looking for those opportunities. One last area, a shorter area today, is around advocating that brand. You've given thought to your unique specialty. You've come up with and articulated your brand. You have to remember, like I've talked about before, that power is about 20% conferred or handed out, and it's about 80% taken. So think about all the opportunities where there's up for grabs power just sitting on the table. Some of this personal brand thing is about being willing, to go for it, to empower yourself, to push back if you get a really unsatisfactory answer. And lots of people have told me they've encountered this at times, that there are some of those faces of resistance. For example, they're sharing the brand they want. Hey, I'd really like to level up to be that top software engineer, and maybe they're getting dismissed. If that happens to you, insist on that objective criteria. So not a vague no or no reason, but really push, peel the onion back with that person. You're telling me I'm not, software developer material. What exactly am I lacking, that I would need in that role? So this is one way you can advocate for yourself and push back. Insist on real reasons, actions that you can do something with. How about when you're rejected, when you're told no? Getting curious, not furious. I'm curious about your no. What would need to be true for you to be comfortable with this pitch that I've made? How about if you're feeling diminished? How about if you're feeling diminished by someone? You maybe have a dream. I'll never forget one of my classmates in my MBA program. I told him I had a dream to write a book, to turn my leadership research into a book. And I'll never forget him saying, "What makes you think you could write a book?" There are times like that you may feel diminished, like I did in that moment, by someone when you're talking about your brand, your aspiration. And in those moments, you can rush to kind of defend, every good thing you've ever done and give the person 52 reasons why you're a good candidate, to write a book or to do something else. Or you can shift the focus outward. And one of the ways I like to do this is to ask someone, who's just come at me with a pointed question of my own. So if he says, what makes you think you could be an author? I would say something like, what makes you think I can't? Okay. It's amazing some of the faces of resistance we get when we put our ambitions or our wants out there. And if you're given some kind of vague approval, maybe somebody says to you, yeah, I guess maybe I could see us getting behind your idea for a new role. But why don't you come back to me in the future about it, right? If you're given that kind of vague approval, make it time bound. All right, I'm going to set a meeting for us to meet about this again 2 weeks from now. And be willing to come back, and not just once or twice, but several times, to move that along, to keep it a priority. You deserve that. I love this quote by Tracy Ellis Ross. Sometimes when we think about that gulf between who we are and where we're trying to go, it can be scary, but we can choose to reframe it, right? And to be inspired by it. I'm learning every day to allow the space between where I am and where I want to be to inspire me, not terrify me. And that's something we can all do for each other. We've looked at those 3 elements of reimagining your brand and advocating it into something real. I hope all of you, as you think about bettering yourselves, will also think about somebody in your world that you can nudge, that you can help that person level up. Somebody did that for me once, many somebodies, and it made such a difference in my life. So whose dream could you listen to and say, that's a nice idea. I want to help you think bigger. Or I want to help you see more. A few reflection questions for you as you think about this and digest, what we've talked about. What are some of the keywords that describe your ideal brand? Really giving that the thought it deserves. What's a way you could scale that brand in the future? What would it look like to take it bigger, take it to a next level? And what's maybe one method you could use to make that brand more visible? So it's not just like the best kept secret ever, something you're just journaling about or keeping to yourself, but it's something people know about. They can act on, they can connect with you. They can connect you to other resources. Some great resources, speaking of them, on this are a classic by Peggy Klaus called Brag. She's great, and she wrote all about how to toot your own horn without blowing it. And another great one called Reinventing You by Dory Clark. Particularly awesome if you have any hopes or aspirations that are a little more entrepreneurial, even if that's like a side hustle or a full-time kind of opportunity. So Rebecca told you at the beginning all about the community and making your presence felt in that community. A quick reminder, do the latest challenge. I know we all want to challenge each other and support each other. And if you haven't, please do add your picture and answer some questions to let us get to know you better. Thank you, Katya, for the very nice feedback. Excellent content today. Thank you. And now it's over to you. What are some of the questions you have about brand? What are some of the things on your minds when it comes to maybe changing a brand you're not super happy with? Or maybe you feel like someone who's more of the invisible person who kind of has a non-brand? Or maybe you have a good one that you would like to be great. I had a client not very long ago who was liked and respected in her organization, but very much being steered towards one area she didn't want to specialize in. That's a different kind of brand challenge. But what questions do you have for me? Let me know. Katya asking, on LinkedIn, should you highlight your organization or your personal brand? Oh, that's a great question, Katya. And I think you need to really consider it from an outsider's view. I think the best LinkedIn profiles, read a little bit like a story that makes sense, a story in parts that makes sense. It's not like really fragmented and disjointed and using one kind of language here and a kind of very different language up here. So thinking about that, what makes it cohesive? What helps this story make sense to other people? And I think one of the best places we can do that is with our headline, making that very short and sweet and clear. But the other part is in that profile section at the top, where we can summarize all of our different feedback, all of our different experience rather, and help it make sense to people. So if you've been in the same industry, your entire career, you might explain that you are that subject matter expert in your particular industry around domain X. If you're somebody who's moved around a lot, you might want to show a different common thread between all of your roles. Maybe it's your excellent project manager skills. But I'd really try to think about your LinkedIn profile in terms of making the cohesive story make sense. And if you're trying to create a common thread, write it in your headline. Don't assume people will gather it on their own. Put it in your introductory section of your profile as well. And I think it's okay to show more of yourself, to answer part of your question, and de-emphasize how much you're devoting to that one company. I think it should be a little broader profile of you, what you have done, what you can do. Chelsea saying, I have a brand that I love, but my biggest obstacle has been exposure. What are your top tips for sharing my brand with the world? Yeah, you're not alone in that at all, Chelsea. And it's such a common frustration and experience with so many people. I would say keep it disciplined. You can start really small. You can start by saying 2 videos or 2 shares that I'm going to make a month with the social media community I've built. But stick to it. Stick to it. Even on days where inspiration isn't there, don't wait for inspiration. I think really treating it like a muscle, bringing discipline to it, it's going to help it feel a little less at your whim, or waiting for the stars to align for you to post, and a little bit more of a commitment that you promise to keep. And I promise you will learn from that and it will get easier. One more question from Kathy. Thank you, Kathy. How can we learn to speak in a more polished way beyond memorizing your phrases? My speech patterns are very colloquial and I want to make the shift. Ooh, what a great question, Kathy. I think there's like an important why that goes with that would help maybe you and also I think me to answer your question more fully, which is what ultimately do you want to get more of in your connections with people and your communication? Do you want people to listen to your ideas more and be willing to embrace them? Is it about being taken seriously and credibility? Is it some other way that you might want to make impact? or even friendships and relationship connections, that would be really helpful to know. And I would encourage you to ask yourself, like, what's your why for leveling up your polish? I think that will help you. I think once you kind of identify that why, I think one of the ways we can be a little more polished is actually to say less. So I hope that comes as a relief, but to ask yourself, am I padding, am I cushioning my message? Can I distill it down to what's essential? I think that's a service we can do for people, is not to like clutter our message and make them go fishing for the exact point we're trying to get across, but to keep it clean and simple. I think if you focus there and you keep your conversation conversational, human to human, I think that will go a long way. I want to thank you all so much. I can't wait to see all of your brands and to watch them continue to grow. And for all of you, until next time, until our huddle later this month, lead on. Thanks, everybody.